immediately, which I appreciate. So let's give him big warm welcome. Let's for Andrew Clay Schaefer, folks.
On yet? Yeah, there we go. Good job. Monitor actually works really well. We don't test these things. We just test in production, like pharmaceutical companies.
Ooh. That's too honest.
Oh, we're just getting started, baby. All right, let's get out of that. Does that work? There we go. That's on too. We got 2 live mics. How's everyone doing? Good morning. Oh, that moves. Destroy everything. I got 3 mics. Look at that. Drink some water. So the thing that was up there said it's a roast for John Willis, not necessarily a roast of John Willis. And also, when I think of roast, I want to see like smoking jackets and like focus on the thing. We'll give Michael credit for his roast yesterday, but when I ask when's the roast, Chris is like, "You're just supposed to make fun of John during your talk." So I guess we'll do a little bit of that, but I'm mostly going to roast all of you, the industry, myself. It's fine, like my normal talk. So this was advertised as a Deming's Days. Who actually knew about Deming before they came today? A little bit. I think I have averaged a good like 1 point something Deming quotes in every talk I ever gave since the beginning of DevOps. So today you're going to get more than that. Deal? So I never heard this until yesterday. Katie said, plan, do, study, adjust, because most people say plan, do, check, act. And then I started reading, and it's like Deming like study better than check because these other psychological things. I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I went home and I did a Google search. It's like no one says plan, do, study, adjust, really. No one searched for it. What's that? Oh, what is going on here? I don't know why that's happening. Let's unplug it and read. You got to be gentle with it, I guess. All right. So no one really searches for plan, do, study, adjust, which is okay. They do search for the acronyms a little bit. And then I got to Wikipedia, which is the canonical source of truth for everything, right? And it's like sometimes people call it plan, do, check, adjust. What is going on? And if you go back here, you can notice there's another version which stands for observation, or as some say, observe the current condition, which I'm sure is done with a lot of pedantic gusto sometimes. So keep that in mind when you read this. You can go back through all your puppet and chef wars and the arguments over platform engineering and SREs and whatever the rest. So I'll read it out loud. Narcissism of small differences is the idea that the more a relationship or community shares commonalities, the more likely the people in it are to engage in interpersonal feuds and mutual ridicule because of hypersensitivity to minor differences perceived in each other. Does anyone know who said that? That's Sigmund Freud. We're going to get a lot of quotes today. So what should we do? I think this is every conversation at the beginning of DevOps. And the answer is trademarked. And then they have this conversation over and over. We don't know what to do because DevOps isn't well defined. We need a definition of DevOps. Okay. And then this book came out. Where I was like, well, we can't do SRE by the book. So which is it? That's convenient. So here's a little guy. Did a few things. DevOps has been very good to me. Let's be clear. And I never really liked that word when it started. I thought that word was dumb. I thought the word cloud was even dumber, but I couldn't stop that either. And then we just keep like this parade of buzzwords on top of buzzwords on top of buzzwords, and like you try to do what you can in the mix of that. So my background really, I started as a software developer. I got into ops because I got focused on a project called Puppet, which was a thing that was sort of leading up to the dev and the ops conversation we're having today. But before that, I was really influenced by Lean. I was really influenced by Lean by Jeff Patton and all the kind of like Lean software people, so Poppendieck and Anderson, and reading that kind of stuff. So in parallel, I was working on these projects, Puppet, OpenStack, Kubernetes, and helping write books and helping organize these conferences around the world, which gave me, I won't say I'm the smartest person, but I got a lot of friends. They're really smart, and I can watch what they do. So sometimes people say, these people invented DevOps or whatever. I don't think that's true. I think you just get to be in a place where you see that and you say that, but it wasn't there. It wasn't yours. It was just a principle that's timeless. The patterns there for forever, and I got to see some of that in this career. So I've been working on this other little side quest. Ergonomic is my little consulting company. This is the softest pitch ever for if you like anything I say today, think it's interesting, think it could be useful in whatever you do, reach out to me on LinkedIn. We can do that conversation. So another quote. There's going to be a lot of quotes, a lot. Just prepare for that. And there's some twists, plot twists. So for every complex problem, there's an answer that's clear, simple. I think this really summarizes almost everything in the tech industry. Wrong. Marketing ruins everything. That's an old quote from the turn of the century. And then this is another quote. Learning is the only sustainable advantage. You're either building a learning organization or listening to someone who is. That was me in 2013. Y'all weren't ready for that. And I learned that lesson that if you tell people a truth they're not ready to hear, that's the same thing as lying to them. But you can go back and watch that talk. That's a good talk. All right. So here we're going to plan. We got a plan. This is what we do. We're through the preamble. We're going to do some socio-technical systems, a little bit of a shout out to Deming. We're going to go down this OODA loop rabbit hole for a minute, come back up to origin myths, the theory of conflicts, and then conclude. Okay, ready? So this is the TLDR. You can leave now if you just read the slide. These principles are timeless. I'm going to try to prove that. All loops are topologically equivalent, because I'm a math geek. And I think someone wants me to say Pareto inefficient Nash equilibrium, which is another thing. This is a little bit of a roast of John. Like, I usually give talks, and John comes and says, I think you're wrong. I'm like, I'm right. And then he leans back and he says, okay, I understand now. I used to talk about the Pareto inefficient Nash equilibrium. That's the problem that all of you have. I try to simplify it a little bit over time because that's the gratuitous math way to say things. I mean, people are like, oh, what does that mean? So hopefully we'll get through that. I'm going to give you a little bit of my loopy move measure stuff, which all these other loops, which you'll see, and then a useful model for deving the ops. So let's do it. Let's go. I'll let John tell this story. It's on the internet if you want to know the whole story. But basically, I made a contract to jump out of an airplane with John about 10 years ago, and we got to do it last year. It was really fun. We're going to do it again this year. We should do it again next year. If anyone wants to come jump out of an airplane with us, you're welcome. So DevOps starts in the 1950s. That's not true. Started way before that, but let's go to the 1950s for a minute. So there's this guy Trist at the Tavistock Institute. He's credited with coining the term socio-technical systems. He coins that term while studying the mechanization of British coal mines. If you go read those papers, there's a bunch of research, and there's like some other little side quests, and there's like the lowlands that people doing stuff in the 70s. Lots of cool research about how this works, and you see almost the exact same patterns that we saw with the adoption of DevOps tooling. And I'm gonna just go out and a legend wager that you're gonna see similar problems with AI adoptions and like the new tooling. Always the same thing. So the fundamental theorem of social-technical theory is that the quality of any organizational system can only be understood and improved if social and technical are both considered as interdependent parts of a single system. If you don't understand how to run an efficient operation, new machinery will just give you new problems of operation and maintenance. The sure way to increase productivity is to better administrate man-machine. That's a Deming quote you could put in the column for Deming. So he's talking about socio-technical systems the whole time too. He uses slightly different language and a slightly different lens. This is from Trist's papers studying coal mines in the 1950s, talking about the old paradigm and the new paradigm. So the old paradigm in 1950s coal mining is technological imperative that we will bring tools to the problem. The new paradigm in 1950s is the joint optimization of the social and technical. I don't necessarily need to read all of these. You can read them, but I'm going to skip to the middle here where it says the tall organizational chart in an autocratic style. That's the old way in the 1950s. But the new way is a flat organizational chart with participative style, right? Like we invented so many things here in the 2000s. And very, very last, low risk taking is the old way. The new way is innovation. Who wouldn't want that? 1950 coal mining. And then you get to Deming in 1980. He did a bunch of stuff in the 50s too, to like get to this part of the story. And before that, this is in John's book. I didn't put it in my slides, but I just want to say real quick. Deming did a lot of great work in the US. And then what happened was he was organizing these factories during World War II. And then all the men came back from the war. They're like, that's good when there's women running the factories. We're not doing that. So that he had to go to Japan so he could hear about it. So this is a video. You can go watch this whole thing on YouTube. Deming in 1980 says, I think that people here expect miracles. American management thinks they can just copy from Japan, but they don't know what to copy. And I have longer versions of some of these topics on other videos at other DevOps days. But without Deming, there would have been no Toyota, there would have been no Lean, and there would have been no DevOps. And a lot of the conversations I was having in 2009 was I was like excited about the 14 points and quoting Deming in every talk. So these American executives visited Japanese factories, and they thought the Japanese were lying to them. They thought they were hiding the truth because they couldn't conceive of just-in-time delivery. Their whole model was predicated on these factories and stacking inventory. They couldn't understand how to continuously deploy microservices. Right? They thought they're lying. No one could ever possibly do 10 deploys a day. And they thought that the Japanese were just on a little show. They had to have inventory hiding somewhere. But GM sees these factories, they see the robots, and they decide that they're gonna compete. So what do? In 1980s money, they spent $45 billion to mechanize their factories. And despite that spending, their market share rose by a single percentage point. And for the amount of money at that time, they could have bought Toyota and Nissan outright, which would have instantly bumped their market share to 40%. Good strategy. So you can read case studies on this. Quality suffered because instead of making flawless cars, workers simply did their assigned jobs. Workers had no big picture goal of building cars together to motivate them, and focusing on the technical never accounting for the social never goes very well. All you do is automate compute. So that you can go read that case study. So this is one of my favorite quotes. I use this one almost the most in any Deming. It's not necessary. Change, survival is not mandatory. Guy. This is always true. It's always true, but there's like punctuated equilibrium. Sometimes it's more true. I feel like it's more true right now. I feel like the whole world's being reconfigured, at least the technical world. Maybe like the geopolitical and economic world too, but we won't talk about that. So this is another callback to this other talk. John says it's one of the best talks ever. So the metaphor here is the Gatling gun, everything forever. Right? And you can find this punctuated equilibrium in war throughout history where whatever happened before can never be the same once the situation happens. Right? So Gatling gun's an example of that. You have, I don't know. There's some that impacted Japan a little bit that you could think about, which is a horrible thing to do to a country, but that's another thing. So who's ever seen the OODA loop? So most of the time when people introduce the OODA loop, they get a little over-rotated on the idea of the OODA loop is just to go faster. And one of the nice things about the OODA loop, which you have to do a little bit of work to make, the plan, do, check, act work for you, it implicitly or explicitly includes an adversary and a conflict. You're trying to go through this thing to beat someone, where the nice people in Greenland don't always have that in there. They do if you get deep enough because you're trying to win. But so this is primordial OODA comes from an essay in 1976. And then some people would say that introduction is this paper that John wrote in 1986, and then it's really formally defined until 1995, which is interesting. But I'm going to argue the OODA loop is meaningless. It's literally useless unless you have the aerial attack study, which he wrote in 1960. It was rewritten in 1964. It was classified until I don't know what year it was declassified, but now you can go read this whole thing. And what he does in this book, this little pamphlet's about 150 pages, is he talks about the limitations of our weapon system, the types of curves, the high side attack, he goes through all these things, and then he gets the fighter versus the fighter and the fighter versus the bomber and all the fighter maneuvers, and he draws all these pictures, and he gets out protractors, and he talks about the turning radius and the thrust of the aircraft, and it all comes down to the simplified version of the model, which is kind of like the chess version of control the center of the board, is that you have a cone of attack projecting in front of you, and the adversary has a cone of attack projecting in front of you, and everything is about trying to put your cone on them and keep their cone off you, right? And so here's this geometry where you have countering the overhead attack with the negative delta Mach. Super exciting. So there's someone coming down on top of you, you're going to come back around and be behind them. He draws all sorts of pictures like this, right? So I'm going to argue that OODA is useless without the aerial attack study, because without that model of a domain, you don't have any basis for observation. You don't have any basis for orientation. You can't decide anything. You can't act. Or you can act, but you won't really know what's working. You can prove this pretty fast if you want to play chess with me, and you just have to move as fast as you can. I'll move as fast as you, but you don't have a good model, unless you're like 2,000 plus ELO. So if you can't describe what you're doing as a process, you don't know what you're doing. It is not enough to do your best. You must know what to do and then do your best. Rational behavior requires theory. These are all quotes. So Demi's basically telling you, you need a model of these things, or you can decisions. So I'm going to argue all these loops are the same. So OODA loop, control theory, cybernetics, plan, do, check, act, plan, do, study, adjust. Put all of them in one bucket. I really like this oversimplified double loop learning sometimes, and then I want people to believe it's not magic, it's just science. We're going to go into science too. What's the origins of science? We'll get there in a minute. So these are all the same. It's silly to argue that you innovated on a loop. Loop. Sure. So this is from Wikipedia, canonical source of truth, control loops. You have something comes in, it's measured, and then something makes a decision and it does something. You just go back and forth, right? That's the or not a cycle. That's pretty cool. So in the single loop learning model, the only thing you really can adjust is your actions. So like you get information, you can build this little thing, you try to get better to win whatever the game is. And then the double loop learning, and this is totally oversimplified. We can do the long version later, but I'll take an hour. Uh, is that your actions and your interpretation of the information are based on this assumptions, your model, and that there should be some mechanism, usually a slower cadence, to go back and revisit the assumptions. And then this is the one I like. I made this for my own little thing, and I also made 3 M's because, so model, move, measure. And then I'm going to say, the way Deming talks about it, if you really want to go read about this, that this is effectively planning is a function of your model that's going to determine what you do, your movements, and then you're going to study what happened from your movements, and you're going to go back to adjust. I'm going to go back to this one just for 1 second because one of the things, and this is whether you're learning as an individual or an organization, action is information. If you're just doing nothing, you can't learn. Like you have to make actions to get. So control loop, same thing. Controller that has a model of the system. The thing that I'm trying to make explicit is that you can improve the model. You can also improve the sensors. You can also improve the actions you can take, right? There's all these things can be improved. And this is effectively what a lot of our systems are doing, right? So you have this declared current state, or I mean the measured current state from the sensors compared against the desired state. And then something decides what to do or not do, and then it takes an action. And this is what's happening when you run Kubernetes. This is what happened when you used to run Puppet. This is what happens if you look and squint at it if you're doing test-driven development. It's that same cycle. So I'm trying to make this thing be in whatever the declared state is, I'm trying to make that true. And this is also the same thing if you're going to build agentic models. This is the same loop. That's what you're building, right? And everyone's talking about evals. If you're in that conversation right now, you got a bunch of things running around. Like, how do you know they're doing the right thing? You better know. Someone better know. All right. So study. This something I thought was interesting. So yesterday we have how we think about the results as the primary instead of the input. And that was good. Think about that. And this is one of the things I thought this for a long time, and I think this relates to like the platform engineering conversation or DevOps, whatever it should be, conversation. The most important thing Toyota produces is not a car, but the system that produces cars. We optimize the system to get the output, with the output coming back into the thing you're trying to do. So this is that guy. You know this guy. A bad system will beat a good person every time. Deming. Quality is pride of workmanship. Deming. Excellence is never an accident, is always the result of high intention, sincere effort, and intelligent execution. It represents the wise choice of many alternatives. Choice, not chance, determines your destiny. That sounds a lot like Deming. That's Aristotle. Pleasure in the job puts perfection in the work. So that's a good 2,500 years ago. Then there's this guy, Francis Bacon. So people say he's credited with the scientific method, or he articulated certain things that people want to give him credit for. There's no root cause. So in the 11th century, this guy in the Middle East wrote a 7-volume treatise on optics. He was the first to make a systematic use of the method of varying the experimental conditions in a constant uniform manner, according to Wikipedia. But if you go even farther down the rabbit hole of the scientific method, there's this Egyptian medical textbook from 1600 BCE, and it has this methodology of examination, diagnosis, treatment, and prognosis. That looks suspiciously like one of these other methods, right? In Egypt, 1600 BCE. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that the root cause is where you stop looking. That's also from Egypt, 1600 BCE, and they probably said this too. If you say mean time to resolve or whatever R you want to use, we're coming for you. All right, so the home front. So you have these socio-technical things going on. I think there's this pendulum that swings in the DevOps conversation, and it's not wrong, but it's also wrong, which is sometimes people are like, "Oh, it's all about the culture," and then other people are like, "It's all about the tools," or like it's not technical enough. It's like you're both wrong, right? You have the social impacting the technical and the technical impacting the social, and you also have these loops inside of them. So there's this fundamental belief that you have that's driving behaviors, and then on the other side you have skills that impact your tools. If you get new tools, but you don't have the skills to use them, then everything looks like a hammer. So how do you get out of that? Well, this is actually happening in your org at every single level, every single role. And this is language I like to use or start using in conversations I have with people, is that if you have disconnecting leaderships, managers, and practitioners, I call that a delamination. So there's some sort of disconnect or misalignment, and we have the classic Dev and Ops divide, which is a disintegration, where you have a disconnect between capabilities. So you have a up and down and across, and I'm gonna say that these result from conflicts between the selfish interests and the collective interests, and misunderstanding about how probably you can blame a little bit on the leaders, but not really. It's just where we're at. So there's this guy Deming, people with targets and jobs, depending upon meeting them, will probably meet the targets even if they have to destroy the enterprise to do it. Who works there? I say this all the time right now. Show me the org chart and the funding model, and I can explain what is difficult. So these small misalignments prevent a lot of progress in organizations, and I'm kind of going to argue that's what keeps us from learning. So through that, you need to make these conflicts explicit and productive, and get to establish this common ground to enable the shared practices. If you don't do this, your platform, DevOps, SRE stuff never works. Right? If you build it, they will run. So you're trying to smooth these boundaries between the tasks and the teams, and that is your tools, your structures, and your narratives. Any organization that designs a system, our quote, will produce a design structure as a copy of the organization's communication structure. My guy Melvin, this rules everything around you. So adjust. This is a little model. I'm going to speed run a little bit, but I have done longer version of this. So the Bezos memo was in 2002. He says, all teams will hence expose their data and functionality through service interfaces. Teams must communicate with each other through these interfaces. So he's saying in 2002, like API or death, right? Like give me an API or give me death. And then at the bottom, anyone who doesn't do this will be fired. So this is like CEO level mandate, 2002. This is what creates Amazon that we know today. So just for the sake of saying the three-layer cake, which is the NIST definition of cloud computing, you have like software stuff, and then you have this middleware stuff, and then you have this stuff that makes the machines, silicon work. And I'm going to say that maps pretty cleanly onto the NIST definition of cloud computing, which are software service, platform service, infrastructure service. That's from 2011. One of the prerequisites for cloud in 2011 definition from NIST is self-service. And what I want everyone to realize here is that every layer, infrastructure, platform, and software are all software, all of which require software development and operations. So you can make some choices about what you want to do, your model. If you go to a cloud provider, maybe you don't have to worry about the bottom layer. Right now, there's no one in the market that's going to give you a fit for purpose platform for every single thing. Like you might find some platformy stuff that kind of works, but there's a lot of platform development that has to happen right now. Some people might call it engineering. Good job. So each of these has their own life cycle. We want to keep them going. And this comes back to the most misunderstood quote in DevOps ever. You build it, you run it, but you're missing the context, which is the developers getting contact with the day-to-day operation of their software. And this is a similar thing from the SRE book, that the SRE build the framework to implement canonical solutions. As a result, the development teams can focus on the business logic because the framework already takes care of correct infrastructure use. This is this guy. He probably said it with a laugh. And when he said that in 2006, which is 3 years before DevOps is a word, he meant that you have a two-piece team that's concerned with running software. They are not running a platform or infrastructure for themselves because they have APIs for that. I'm not gonna say anything. Because the 2011 NIST definition of cloud computing said self-service, so what are you gonna do? So all these things happen at different paces. The pace changing can create turbulence and sharing between layers. This is technical and social, right? So you wanna have integration. Continuous integration can reduce risk of your code deployment, but you should also have a mechanism for integrating the socio side. So there's probably missing meetings and missing metrics in your organization that keep you from fixing these alignments, the delamination and disintegration that happens. So we're coming to the end. We need to add a lean to CAM so that it wouldn't spell scam. That's a little bit of a joke, inside joke. It kind of actually makes me sad that people in DevOps don't talk about the CAM thing. Like, it used to be like a little bit of a bright line. You could ask someone if they knew what that was, and if they didn't, like, oh, you're not in the tribe, in the real tribe. Anyway. So, and also, I think this is a good thing to add to it. It's not whatever we are today is not good enough for tomorrow, right? Like, whatever we did with Puppet's not good enough for tomorrow. Whatever we're doing with Kubernetes today is not good enough for tomorrow. Like, there's always going to be some change. And then I like to make these 3 columns. So complacent is not as good as inspired. I mean, you can work where you want, but that's what I'd say. So here we are, home stretch. So I used to get really frustrated when people would say, oh, we're doing Agile and we're doing DevOps. And it's like, well, why aren't you good at anything? Like, you aren't good at anything related to software operations. So, like, you have this vocabulary, but you don't do anything. What I started to realize after having that conversation over and over is that in the early Velocity Conference, DevOps Days conversations, you have these early adopters who are seeking an advantage. The fact that they're seeking an advantage gives them one, and then that legitimizes the practice. And once the practice is legitimized, what happens is that as you come into maybe the beginning lip of the early majority seeking advantage, but as you come into the late majority, everyone is really just seeking legitimacy. They want to use the vocabulary, but change nothing else. And the practices cross the chasm a lot slower than the vocabulary. So my advice to you is seek advantage, and also recognize that change is hard, because if you're trying to learn new skills, your performance almost always goes down before it goes back up. If you've ever tried to learn anything hard, sports, music, chess, whatever, when you try to do new things, your performance almost always goes down. And if you're not cognizant of that in a socio setting and you don't manage the politics of it, you're never going to get out of the bottom. You're never going to get out of the dip because it will come for you. Ask me how I know after. So how many times we say something doesn't matter as much as how many people still need to hear the message. Sometimes people say things like, oh, DevOps, your first DevOps days. And on some level, everything ever needed to be said about DevOps was said in 2010. But if you haven't heard it, we're still here with the message. So I am forever learning and changing. We are here to make another world. These are 2 different demi quotes, but I really like this. And I'm going to say this: if there ever should have been a manifesto, this is what it should have been. DevOps manifesto. I am forever learning and changing. We are here to make another world. So I'm going to sign that right now. And then I'm going to ask you to sign it too. So I want everyone to just say this with me. I'll say it, and you say it back. So I am forever learning and changing. We are here to make another world. All right, let's go. You haven't learned anything until you change your behavior. So whatever you do for these days, you go back to work. If it's just the words and you don't get new behaviors, then you're just collecting trivia. You're not actually learning. So I'm encouraging you to go back and try something new. Try an experiment. Do some science. Waste no more time. This is another quote. Waste no more time arguing about what a good DevOps should be. Be one. That's Marcus. My boy Marcus. When you're reading Greek stuff, you got to find the good ones. So maybe the real DevOps are the friends we made along the way. And that's the end. Thanks for listening.
That was awesome. Thank you, Andrew.
You're welcome.
Next up, we've got Ajuna with How to Win at DevOps and Spades. I'm excited for this. And while Ajuna is setting up, I believe I got word Nathan Harvey is going to jump in for an Ignite, so that should be fun. Hopefully, Andrew gave you some ideas for open space topics. He is really good at chess, much better than me. Let's hear it for Ajuna, everybody.
I'm really excited to be here with all of you today. I am using this as an excuse to teach you all how to play spades. Not yet? Turn me up. How about now? Nope. Third tries the charm. There we go. Move that over there. Cool. Hi, everyone. How many live mics are here? Maybe that one. Do I annoy all of you if I talk now? Okay, no, cool. Great. I am here to chat about how to win at Spades and DevOps. This is secretly an excuse to teach you all how to play spades. And that's going to be okay. So to start off with, who already knows how to play spades? Okay, about half the room. Who doesn't know? Okay, cool, about half. So we'll get that number up for sure. And that's okay if you didn't raise, if you raise your hand, but you didn't know, perfectly fine. You've probably seen a picture like this floating on the internet somewhere, kind of inciting a lot of conversation, mostly argument about what the right way to win at spades looks like and how to bid. I will help you understand what that means. I did not grow up playing spades. I'll introduce myself. My name is Ajuna Kiruzi. I grew up in Tanzania. I played a different game that's very similar to spades. There are many games very similar in this realm. I just heard of another one from a co-organizer the other day in Germany. I am a much better spades player than a photographer. That is my thumb in the corner. This is from my favorite beach growing up back home. But the scariest part about spades is that there's a ton of terms. There are all of these that can get very confusing. Books, bids, bats, board. I last time I gave this talk once before, I heard one called Boston. Um, that one was new to me, so every time I do this, I learn new ones. So if you know any more, find me later and find out. But overwhelmingly, the thing that you need to know is the rules. So we'll start off with knowing where to start. So let's review the rules so you can know how to play when we do. So I'll go through these quickly. But generally, spades is played as a four-person game with a team of two um, sitting across from each other. So you are in a team, so your partner's across from you, and then you're usually playing with another team. Technically, you can play it with more people, but every other place I've played it, it's usually been four people. You take turns being the dealer, and the dealer will deal every card to each player. So in a standard 52 card deck, everyone will get 13 cards. And then as a speak out loud and say how much you think you might win. So of 13, how many do you think of those rounds or books that you'll win? So don't go higher than 13 because that means someone is definitely overestimating themselves. And then start the game. Usually, the player that leads is to the right of the leader, and you kind of go around. And generally, when a player leads with a card, you have to follow and play with that same suit, that card if you have it. Highest value wins, and then you win that round, trick, book, and then the player that wins starts the next hand. So generally, the way that it goes is the highest card is the ace of spades, then it's the king, queen, and you kind of work your way down to the two of spades. Um, One of the biggest rules is a player cannot lead with a spade until they've been played. But if you don't have any cards of the leading suit, that's when you can start playing spades. Um, and then from there, you can bring out more spades. The points are scored equal to your bid. So if you and your partner say that you think of the 13 rounds, you can win 5, and you get your 5, you get 50 points. If you say you can win 5 and you get 6, you get 51 points. And if you say that you can win 5 and you get 4, you get negative 50 points. So definitely you're wanting to hit as close to the amount that you'll get. One of the biggest rules and why people get very upset at each other is called table talk. So generally, because you're sitting across from your partner, other than discussing at the beginning how much you think you'll win, you're not supposed to tell each other what you think that what card in your hand, you can talk across the table. So generally, that's one place that people fight a lot, but the main place that people fight a lot is what we call reneging. So reneging is when you fail to play a card of a leading suit earlier and maybe try to win that suit by playing a spade, and then later down the line, you're caught playing with that suit down. So for example, if there's a time when hearts were leading and a player throws a spade to win that hand, and then later they play a heart, if you remember, you can catch them, and usually there is a penalty for that. Most times I've heard is usually you lose 3 books. So almost always that makes you lose your bid. Other times, it can be fisticuffs. It's really depending on you and the room that you're in. I'm going to use an online option to describe how this game is played. I really love cardgames.io. They have a ton of different games, but I specifically mostly play spades here. You can play virtually with multiplayer. So actually, my spades partner, who's now my life partner, and I play virtually. We play with each other when we're traveling and stuff like that. But the first part of spades, connecting that back to DevOps, is that the culture definitely beats the rules. It depends what group that you're in. You got to talk to people. You got to figure out what are the traditions, how is the right way to play. This is a very controversial card depending on how you play spades. I mostly describe spades as the ace of spades being the highest. There is a way of playing spades where that is not necessarily true. So if you throw this card out too early, which I did when I was very young, still playing spades, you can definitely piss off a lot of people. Um, what I'm talking about is it depends on what you're playing. So most often, it's beginners and some parts of the country play high, where ace of spades is the highest card. I first learned how to play spades in college in Iowa. I'll tell you about how I got there another time. But generally, the ace of spades is the highest. In Atlanta and other places in the South, Joker Joker Deuce Deuce is a way of playing spades that is most common here, where you include the jokers and remove two of move 2 cards. So it's usually the 2 of oh, no, sorry, language. Thank you. I'm sorry. Swahili has a different word for clubs, which means like shit. So I was trying not to say that word out loud, but here we are. Anyway, so you remove those 2 and include the 2 of the jokers. And then the 2 jokers become the highest card, and then the 2 of diamonds, third highest card, then the 2 of spades, and then the ace, and it goes down. So in the time when I played, didn't know that throughout the 2 of hearts, 2 things happen. One, I definitely cut way too early, used a very high card to win a round I wasn't supposed to. But 2, I ended up reneging by accident because I cut his face despite having that card because I thought that was the diamond that I wanted to was wrong. So the room that I was in was very upsetting me, but also I had to know what the culture was. There are two other ways you could play spades that are less common. Joker Joker Ace, where it doesn't use the two of diamonds and the two of spades as being very high, and Joker Joker Deuce Ace, where it just uses the two of spades. I don't play these as often, so I'll just skip over them really quickly. But connecting this back to DevOps, your priorities and your processes definitely matter, right? Generally, when you're playing, your best practices in the field become the most important thing and the thing that you should do immediately. But when you're newer on a team and you want to know how to do things, you go to the document, you read it. If it exists, if it doesn't exist, ask around and they tell you generally this is how we do things. And then if you're not particularly sure of that, you talk to your boss and they tell you. Or if they're not around, you ask the closest subject matter expert and they tell you. Or just a random person next to you, you agree and they're the right thing and then you do it. But generally, what your boss tells you does trump everything else. If they decide that the best practices is wrong for whatever reason, that becomes the most important way to play. Hopefully, you have a better boss than that, and they're open to feedback and you can discuss. But overwhelmingly, you do have to follow what your organization says. And a big part of that is the culture, right? I work at Datadog. We love documentation. Like most companies, when we have an incident, we analyze it, we write it down, we write a postmortem, and that's the rule. When you have an incident, you write it down. But that's the culture that builds up that rule, right? If we just generally had the rule of that's the thing that we should do, but no one followed it or kind of half did it, it wouldn't be particularly helpful to learn from. We also keep a catalog of other like performance and reliability wins on our Confluence page. And I think that culture of celebrating wins makes it easier to want to do those wins. So if you promote people either financially or just giving them props virtually in a space where you can get more kind of street cred, I guess is the word that's going to come to mind right now, or in general, just having that culture of celebrating and documenting your wins can make it much easier for people to want to go above and beyond or outside their realm to improve things around them. So for better for worse, culture definitely can trump the rules that are going on. I have worked in places where the culture has not been as great. I've worked in places where the culture has been fantastic, specifically for DevOps being in a place where when you cause an incident, people are excited that you found a way that the system wasn't supposed to work and now they can fix it, and being upset at you and firing you because you made a mistake, that can make a big difference in how you live in that environment. Okay, back to spades. So generally, whenever people post cards like this, they want people to virtually make a bid on how, if they have that hand, what does that look like? So I'm going to have us go through my system now. This is what cardgames.io looks like, and we're all playing at me at the bottom. I would love to hear from folks what you think the bid should be in here. Yeah, in the back. 5, okay. Couple risky sixes. Okay, I'm with it. Anyone else has a different answer? Okay. I bid 5. Sometimes I can be pretty aggressive and bid 6. I'm not it. The other people around the table bid a similar amount. However, you bid, if we remember again, you're not supposed to have any table talk. If you don't recognize this it's from a show called Red Table. That's why I introduced it. But anyway, you're not supposed to coordinate with your partners, but there are rules against communicating. But when you have to figure out how to play things, you don't really. The main thing that you don't want to do is butt heads with your partner because that can cause y'all to not meet your bid. Going back to DevOps, that's pretty similar. You're cooperating and trusting with your teammate. That means trusting that your partner is going to play well and not trying to like overbid to overcompensate for them or the other way around. You wanna make sure that you are finding the right balance. And similarly, in DevOps, we wanna tear down silos. I hear that all the time, and we want to have that collaboration. But in a lot of our modern systems, cooperation beats collaboration. And what I mean by that is most of our systems now are kind of decoupled into these small pieces, and teams work independently and quickly. If you don't trust that the other people is doing, then you're gonna collaborate, you're gonna butt heads and gonna be duplicating a lot of work. Generally, you wanna work together, but that means fully allowing them to work on their stuff and you working on your stuff, and together it'll come together with the right APIs where you can work together seamlessly. You want to make sure that your stuff is stable and reliable, trust for them to do the same, and that's how things can move a little bit faster. So we're going to go through a hand of spades here. So generally, I'm about to ask, with this hand, what would people start with? It's a lot of different. The A, one of the aces, okay. Okay, started with the ace, kind of threw that out there. Was able to win that hand as it kind of went around. I threw out my other ace, as other people suggested, just to get it out of the way. And then I threw the king of clubs. Generally here, I was a little bit worried throwing out my king, which is why I didn't do it a little bit earlier, despite knowing that I had the ace as well. The reason is we know that there's 13 of each suit, and I had 6 to start. Me having 6 means someone else has less than that. So the chances that I was going to get cut or have someone else throw a spade was kind of high, and that's what happened. Lisa on the right there threw out a spade, me, and they won that hand. Which brings us to the next thing, which is limiting your spread, right? The reason I didn't play the king was because I was wanting also to get rid of that ace, secure my second book that I had promised of 5. And when I'm playing my game, I want to make sure that I don't cause too much trouble going around the table. So from there, because Lisa won, they started playing. So they played the ace of diamonds, which was helpful for me to know. I got rid of my only diamond, which was the 8 of diamonds. And now I'm ready to cut diamonds. I was very excited. Then they played hearts. I also only had 1 heart left, threw that out there. So the next time that they played any of the red cards, I was ready. I started throwing my spades out and was able to secure a third of my hand. It's feeling pretty good here. But going back to DevOps, it's not just about one person or even one team. DevOps is usually try not to separate them throwing things over the wall. It's hard to be effective sometimes when you have a lot of generalists, right? So you have to find the right balance of having generalists and having people who know deeper about how things work. It makes it a lot easier to run a business when everyone is able to work on their stuff, but at the same time knows enough to be able to help each other when gaps kind of evolve. You can't build a ton of stuff with the same pieces. Even in Legos, where it can be very cool to build some stuff. Honeycomb has some cool Legos out there, and I'm sure some of those pieces are all pretty different, and they make for some very, very cool um, designs at the end of the day. So when you're working with your other folks on your team, we want to limit our spread a little bit. We want to know everything that's going on, build some subject matter expert, but still know enough where if one of our teammates has to leave for whatever reason, we can step in and cover for them before they come back, but have that cooperation and trust that they really got it overall. So finding that balance of knowing enough, but not overstepping is a good way to start. Back to our game. At this point, I didn't have a lot of big cards remaining, so I just threw out my 4 of clubs, and I trusted that my partner probably hadn't had an opportunity to lead, so wanted to give them a chance to maybe start throwing out some cards. So throwing out my 4 of clubs, they weren't able to win that hand, which taught me that they didn't have a ton of clubs, which I also kind of knew because I did have the ace and the king of clubs. In this case, we are playing ace side, so that 2 of diamonds is a regular 2. Don't worry about it, all is well here. Um, so Mike on the left won, so they started, and I saw that Bill already was able to cut with the 2 of spades. In this particular case, the next person also played hearts. I don't actually have to cut again. I don't wanna butt heads with Bill. So what I was going to do is I just left it, threw out one of my clubs, get rid of some of those non-winning hands in my deck. Threw out the 6 and kept it pushing. Bill won. Bill threw out K of diamonds. I still didn't have any diamonds, but didn't want to collide with him again. Threw out the 7, and they were able to win their hand. Um, Next, Bill threw out the queen of spades. This was very telling for me. make audience participate again. Does anyone know? Yes, I know I have the K and the ace of spades. What this told me as well is that we are going to definitely get all of our cards. So we're going to secure our bid because I already have two. I only need two more. They already got their two. So at this point, I know that we're definitely going to at least meet our bid. But then I can maybe start playing a little dirty and figure out maybe I can make the other people not meet theirs. So then I can start trying to figure out, okay, can I earn more than I bid to make sure of those 13 I got an above average amount? They only did 5, we did 7. Trying to do that math, 12. So there's one empty book remaining. If I win 2 extra, I know that I can make them go back by their bid, so they can go back by -15. And that's kind of monitoring everywhere. I did say I work at Datadog, which part of you would probably like, oh my God, monitoring. But what I actually intend, there's a lot of different ways to keep tabs, and you have to do there in this world. We have to keep tabs on a lot of different stuff. A monitoring solution is one of them, but Confluence, Mail, Trello, Slack, Jira, RFPs, whatever you're using to keep track of all of the work that's being done across the team can be pretty helpful. You want to know what's going on and you want to be able to understand how other people are working so you can have that collaboration kind of informally by being aware of what they're doing and finding opportunities to collaborate as they pop up rather than completely having to like be in all their meetings, for example. Another time when so I told you that I grew up playing a game similar to Spades. The game, you're allowed to play with 2 people. So my dad and I played a lot growing up, and my dad is someone who definitely keeps an eye on everything. Eventually, I asked him what his trick was to remember what all of the cards were on the deck, especially when playing with other people. And he told me that he just pays attention to like the bigger cards. So by the end of the game, he knows where the ace and the king, all of the suits. So he just pays attention to 8 cards. You don't have to pay attention to everything, but you need to know the important things for your business, right? We generally have fortnightly updates at Datadog where people share the different RFCs that are going on. So looking into those, we demos, building that culture where people share the things that they're working on and also the culture where you go in and it's easy to find for you to read what's happening can definitely make it easier. So having that documentation, finding out what's going on, reading everything that's happening can make the culture of DevOps at your organization continue to improve. And in my case, I eventually did start leading my dad, but he was definitely the type of person that was like, as a kid, I will beat you so you can learn faster. And honestly, it did help me as a person. So I appreciate him for that. Kind of wrapping up our game a little bit here, I already knew that we were going to win all the bid that we had. So as the game went around, made sure not to slide with my partner Bill there by throwing out a low spade. I had to play a spade because I did still have them. And then when I imagined that Bill might have run out of spades at that point. So when they threw out the 10 of diamonds, I made sure to go in with my king of spades to win that hand. Um, I was wrong. They did still have the spade, but just a low one. So I started with the ace of spades, which made everyone else also play their spades. By this point, I also was like, the chances that there's still spades at the table wasn't too high. So I felt a little bit better when it came time to play my 10 of clubs that I likely might win that hand too, which I did, which ended up being that Bill and I made our bid, but also had 2 extra bags. So we got bags, but that made the other team go back by 50. I'm really showing you a good hand here because the next round I definitely was beat, but every game has pros and cons. To recap really quickly, the culture always trumps the rules. There's always a variety of rules. We hear at these conferences that we go to what the current best practice is, but it can take a while to take that best practice, translate to your organization, and actually turn that into culture. But that's the only way that things actually happen. When you're working with other people, whether it's a space partner, life partner, or teammates, you have to make sure that you limit your spread. You don't want to do everything, but you have to let other people contribute and find the right balance, but also keep an eye on all that's going on. We want to document things that are happening so other people can monitor what we're doing too and share that load a little bit. Also, gonna make a shout out that it is very helpful to be welcoming to new people. If you know any Spades people in your life and they want to learn how to play, really encourage an opportunity to play with them so they can get caught up too, and so they can know the culture as well. That's my
Is that better?
yeah.
So we do have a question slide, so I'm going to open the floor. Anybody got a question for Gina?
Can we play spades later? I'm gonna run to CVS and see if I can get a card.
Yeah, I think we could do an open space on card games and game theory.
Hell yeah.
I'm an enumerative combinatorist, so like
Ooh.
I know a lot about card decks, different kinds of decks. I know Andrew's into game theory. So like
What
maybe
I
we take
hear
it.
is you can count cards.
I can, and you were that's one way to count cards. It's just counting the high cards, the face cards. And
I should have. If I was counting the spades, I should have been for sure that there wasn't. I wasn't paying as much attention as I should be. Gotta monitor more.
but yeah, there's plenty of room. We could geek out on that all day.
Oh yeah.
Thank you so much, Ajuna. That was awesome. So we're ahead on time a little bit, which is great because we're moving into a break. Reminder: who got a sponsor passport yesterday? Anybody? Okay, we got some hands up. We are raffling off Meta Quest 3, which is an Oculus, it's the new name for Oculus Rift VR headset. We've also got some gift cards for Longhorn and Starbucks, since these are all things that get roasted meats and coffee beans. So be sure to go talk to the sponsors, get your passport stamped. If you need a passport, we have some at registration, and we're going to reconvene and like we'll get back on schedule. I think it's like yeah, I can't remember exactly what time. It'll be 10, 15, 20 minutes somewhere in there. I'll go flash the lights. We've got Norondo up with like civic hacking, how to apply this stuff to more real life stuff. It's going to be a good talk. Thanks, everybody. We'll be back in here shortly. Yes, all the sessions are being recorded. We are live streaming the event too, if you didn't know that. So we are live on YouTube.